Hey, it's Bill Romer again back at the keyboard here. I hope you are enjoying the videos that I've been sharing with you. I want to give you two tips on piano improvisation, one of which really kind of changed the way I play the piano, and it was given to me by Herb Ellis, who used to be Oscar Peterson's guitar player. I went to see him years ago in St. Louis at a jazz club and just asked him for a tip, and the tip he gave me was to sing what you play. And he didn't say much more than that, but really underneath that is the idea of phrasing when you improvise. So creating these nice phrases when you play. And the second tip I want to give you is just to make improvisation super simple for you and give you a good start. And improvisation is a combination of creativity at the piano on the one hand and some technical ability also, and using tools and techniques. So you could just sit down and just play whatever comes to mind at the piano and be completely creative, and that's a valid way to play. Or you could apply some structure and rules to that, which is what I'm going to show you. Okay, so let's stay in the key of C just because it's easier on the white keys here. We might move to a different key here shortly, but let's say we have a C. Let's make it interesting, like a C7 chord. Right? And I might have played with the root like this and then the chord, or I might just be playing the chord because there's a bass player, whatever it may be. But depending on the rhythm of the song and the tempo, you can just improvise on the root of the chord. Now this is very simple, I realize this, but this kind of helps you with phrasing too. And we'll incorporate that idea of phrasing throughout here. The best way to do that is to sing what you play, not out loud, but maybe hum it to yourself or just in your mind. And that sort of automatically creates phrasing when you play. So instead of just randomness, your brain will tend to move towards phrasing if you hum it or sing it. So da 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 da. Let's move to an F9. How about that? Right there. We'll leave the F in the bass. We'll play the 7th, the 9th, the 3rd, and the 5th. So F9. Da 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 da. Back to the C7. Da 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 da. Now how about a G7? How about there? Da 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 da. Back to F9. Da 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 da. Back to C7. Da 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 da. All right. So I realize that's very basic. Okay, just playing, improvising on one note, but it really emphasizes phrasing while you're playing. And you can do this with fast or slow. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. In fact, there's a famous song called One Note Samba. I kind of forget how it goes at the moment. Da 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 and that's really the main part of the song. It's a great song. There's a little bridge section that goes up and down scales, but it's a fun little song. So anyway, that's an actual song with just single note phrasing on not exactly the chord root in that case because the chords are moving, but in our case to improvise we'll just use that chord tone. Now an interesting thing you can do here is to now play any notes you want but maintain an emphasis on that chord root. So now if you just sort of let your hand bounce around, it's going to sound terrible, but just get your fingers to any notes you want on the keyboard, even if you smash a couple here and there. but always be aware of that chord root getting back to it. So, and fairly often too, what you're playing. And what I mean is, if we have a C7 chord, then we might start on the root, but then we'll just start playing any notes we want. And come back to that C, in this case, the root. Now F. Back to C. Now, what that does is, besides sound really kind of weird, is it really kind of opens up your brain to hearing different sounds and improvisation, while getting your brain and your sensibilities back to a point where it feels good because you hear that C again. Whatever note. All right. And the longer you stretch out that phrase with all the wacko notes in there, the more tension you're going to build. If you shorten it, it makes it more palatable, I guess you would say, to the listener. So if we do short, kind of wacky phrases before we get back to that C, we get something like that. Okay, so we took out some of the tension because we shortened that period of time where we're playing just any notes that we want. All right, so this is a fun way to just sit down and improvise at the piano. It doesn't have to be random stuff. Now keep that phrasing in mind too, remember? So da da ba da ba da ba ba da ba da da ba 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 ba. Ba, 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 ba. And again, you don't have to sing exactly what you're playing. The idea is just to get the phrasing and to help your brain and your hands do the phrasing by singing or humming along with it, okay? So it's just a fun kind of wacky way to really stretch your brain while you're improvising, all right? And you can also then just do chord tones. Pardon me, maybe you figured this out already. But if we have a C7 chord, then we have these chord tones. And you can just use those also. Kind of in a Latin mood today, I don't know why. All right, and you can add those two then together. So if we do all right, and obviously you can do this with any tempo, any speed song that you want. This is just kind of one I picked for some reason. I don't know why. So we have phrasing, very important in improvisation. Otherwise, it just is kind of, it gets to be overwhelming and just boring. There's nothing interesting about it. So the phrasing is really what makes that interesting. All right, and that one note samba song is a good example of that. Just with the single notes, all you've got is phrasing, and the chord changes go along with it too. So phrasing, very important. Chord root, you can just play that single note while you're improvising and playing a chord with your other hand. Okay? And then any notes that you want to create tension using the chord root, or really any chord tone, but a chord root is really good. It's a really solid foundation to get you back to something that sounds normal, I guess you would say again. So you can think of it as kind of an excursion from the key, going out, getting crazy, and then coming back again. And the length of time that you do that determines the amount of tension and release of that tension. Okay, and then of course chord tones that we talked about also. And I'm going to leave it at that for now for improvisation, because that should give you plenty to play with and get some really interesting sounds on the piano for whatever song you may be working on. So I hope you enjoyed these 3 videos, this one about improvisation. Thanks again for watching. Oh, and if you enjoyed this or have a question or comment, please feel free to leave it in the comments down below this video here. Okay? Thanks. This is Bill Romer. We'll see you again soon.